do a poll, in a political poll, you can't ask, like I have 650,000 constituents. So if I want to know how I'm doing, I can't go ask 650,000 people. So you do a sample. Well, anytime you take a sample, it's not perfect, right? But if arguably we took this half and this class and we cut it in half, and you were a true random sample, okay, which is a whole nother issue when you do random sampling. I have to make sure when I do, since I have 20 counties and 161 towns, first you have to know the demographic that you are pooling, or that you're polling. So in my district, for example, I know what percentage is Latino, what percentage is African American, what percentage of my district is women, what percentage is male, what percentage is 20 to 30 years old versus 55 to 75 years old. Now, why is that important? Because if I'm going to do a random sample to take a poll, and I'm going to poll 100 people or 500 people or 1,000 people, I don't want to poll 1,000 women, right? Because if I poll 1,000 women, I didn't really get a good sample of my district. It's got to be a representative sample. But even when you do a representative sample, it's not perfect. And because it's not perfect, you have a margin of error. And the margin of error is greater, meaning it's more imperfect, if you have a smaller pool, or a smaller poll in a larger pool, right? So if I just polled this lady here, out of all of you, obviously, if this was a classroom, if this was a classroom of women of her age group, and I just polled her, and I said, well, 100% think this, it's going to be pretty far off, right? Now, if I poll this woman and this man, and it's truly a 50-50 demographic, now all of a sudden I've gotten a better margin of error because it's closer to probably the true representation. So for a congressman with 650,000 people, I have to sample about 400 people to get a margin of error of 3%. Now, why is that important? Because most elections you don't win by 20 points, right? Most elections could be decided by 6 or 7 points. Well, a plus or minus 3% doesn't necessarily mean that there's only a 3% error. It actually means that there could potentially be a 6% error. Because on the high side, it could be plus 3, meaning I could really have 56%, and my opponent could really only have 25%. You follow me? So if I'm close in a poll, and I think, oh, gee, I got 53 and my opponent's got 40 or 53 to 47, but it's a plus or minus 5 points, I could be losing the race. So you have to increase your sample pool based on the population that you're sampling in order for it to be statistically significant. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And with what confidence level do you use?
What do you mean by that?
When you say the margin of error is plus or minus 3 percentage points, whatever it is, are you 90% confident in that?
Oh, right.
70% confident. What level do you use?
It's above 90. But yeah, that's exactly right. So your confidence level is what. It's been a while since I've been in the class, but your confidence level exactly is basically how you decide your sample pool. I want to say it's, I don't know, 93. It's not 95%. It's above 90 though.
So you actually figure your margin of error and then figure out or figure the other way around. What confidence you want to have this before you figure your margin of error. So if you say I want to be 90% confident, then you can figure out how big your polling pool has to be in order to generate your plus or minus 3.
Right.
Okay.
We don't actually, and part of that, you asked a good, part of the reason why I don't actually get to decide that is because every congressional district, theoretically, is the same size. And so whenever, like now they're doing a census this year, and every congressional district will increase because the population of the country is increased. But when that happens, the confidence level, in other words, if I did a sample size of 100 people in my district, nobody in Washington, D.C. would take me serious. So what happens is there becomes a norm or a standard by which everybody has to do the same number. So whether you're a congressman in Peoria, Illinois, and Jacksonville, Illinois, or you're a congressman in Phoenix, Arizona, we all arguably represent 650,000 people, so we all do sample size polls of 400. So that's kind of become the norm. Interestingly, next year it won't be 400, it'll have to be more than 400 because all of our congressional sizes, our population sizes have increased from 650,000 to 800,000. They're going to increase by 150,000 people. So every member of Congress in the next Congress will have 800,000 constituents in their district, which will then require everybody to do a bigger sample, which will make the pollsters even more rich. So, yeah. Any questions? You're all happy? You're all registered to vote, right?
Yep.
I'm not.
You're not?
No.
How old are you?
18.
18. When
Yeah.
did you turn 18?
A couple months ago, I just
Really?
didn't register.
You know, it's real easy because in our state we have motor voter laws, which means you don't even have to fill out a form. If you take your driver's license into the DMV and you just say, "Hi, I'm Billy Smith and I wanted to register to vote," they look you up, push one button, and boom,
Nice.
you're registered.
Is it too late at this point?
I think it is. Yeah, it was last week. So, but I always tell people, if you're not registered to vote and you truly want to make a difference in an election, you probably can. Well, I know you can because in a presidential election, let me ask you this random polling question here: what percentage of Americans who are registered to vote in a presidential election will actually vote? Now, the reason I say presidential election because that's the one that everybody likes to vote for. City council, a lot of people don't go out and vote for. Congressman, less than president, more than city council. But in presidential elections, of those registered to vote, what do you think the percentage is? So these are people that actually took the time to go get registered to vote.
Should be a high number.
President.
I'll say 80.
So last cycle was the highest in our nation's history. 55%, 56, 55%. On the average, it's about 50% of those registered. Now, in order to register to vote, you gotta be how old? 18. So of the population in our country, which are 18 and older, what percentage of that, of our nation's population of 18 and older, what percentage do you think are registered to vote?
Of the 18-year-olds?
And older. So yourself, 18 all the way up to alive.
Well, the older are registered more so than the younger. So,
It's like, it's not a big number.
It's actually 50%.
is it 50?
So half of our nation's population, which are eligible to vote, are registered to vote. Okay? So, and in a presidential election, half of those were, so what is the answer to this question? Well, or what's the question I'm getting to? Of a room of 100 people, if you're truly representative of the country, how many actually voted out of 100 people? 25. In a presidential election. It's not a presidential election this cycle. So the percentage is closer to 30, which is how many people?
Out of 100.
About 30, right? So my point is if you're not registered to vote, and you actually went and found 2 or 3 people to go vote that are registered, you will have exponentially impacted the outcome of an election. And that's why there are so many races that tend to be decided by just such a small percentage. I mean, I'm a Republican member in Congress, and the nominee for governor here in the state, Bill Brady, he got the nomination by less than 500 votes in a state of 12 million people. And so, he who shows up and votes decides how the world's run. So anyway.